They call Blenheim one of England's grandest palaces, a World Heritage Site visited by millions, but after nightfall, the splendor fades. A white lady drifts through its halls. Cromwell's ghost still prowls the ruins of old Woodstock Manor, and even Churchill himself is said to linger, a shadow of cigar smoke in the dark. Tonight, we uncover the ghosts of Woodstock and Blenheim Palace. Welcome back to Ghosts of the Cotswolds, where we explore the haunted histories hidden behind England's most beautiful villages, towns, and houses. This time we journey to Woodstock, an Oxfordshire market town on the edge of the Cotswolds. Beside it rises Blenheim Palace, seat of the Dukes of Marlborough, the birthplace of Winston Churchill, and one of Britain's great stately homes. But its grandeur hides centuries of tragedy, scandal, and restless spirits. Tonight, we walk Woodstock's haunted streets and pass through Blenheim's shadowed corridors, where the past refuses to rest. Blenheim is vast, more than 180 rooms, miles of corridors, and grounds that stretch for thousands of acres. But for all its light-filled galleries and tapestries, it is the sight of a pale woman drifting through the halls that unsettles most. The apparition is usually described as tall, dressed in flowing white, gliding silently along passageways, before vanishing at a doorway or staircase. Staff working late have reported sudden drops in temperature, or the feeling of being watched, followed by the glimpse of a figure turning the corner ahead. Some say she is a Marlborough Duchess, Henrietta, who struggled to hold the estate together after the first Duke's death, or Sarah Churchill herself, the formidable matriarch who clashed with Queen Anne. Others whisper she is older still, a woman from Woodstock Manor whose spirit lingered when the palace was built on its ruins. In one chilling account, a guide locking up at dusk heard soft footsteps echoing on the stone floor. Thinking a visitor had been left behind, he called out, but received no reply. When he rounded the corner, he saw the pale form of a woman gliding towards the great hall. Before he could follow, she dissolved into nothing. The silence left behind was deeper than before, as though the palace itself were holding its breath. Whether duchess or servant, legend insists the White Lady has walked Blenheim for centuries, a reminder that not all who lived within its walls have found peace. Long before Blenheim rose in splendor, the site was home to Woodstock Manor, a royal hunting lodge used by kings and queens from Henry I to Elizabeth I. By the 17th century, it had become a symbol of loyalty to the crown. When the Civil War came, Oliver Cromwell ordered it occupied and stripped. After the king's execution, Cromwell himself was said to have stayed there, and it is here that his ghost stories begin. For generations after his death, villagers swore that Cromwell's restless spirits still stalked the manor ruins. Lights were seen in empty windows, footsteps echoed in abandoned halls, and shadowy forms moved across the courtyard. When Blenheim Palace was built in the early 1700s, much of the old manor was demolished, but locals whispered that Cromwell's ghost refused to leave. Even in the new palace, staff reported the sound of heavy boots crossing stone floors when no one was near. Some claimed to glimpse a stern-faced man in 17th century dress glowering from an upper window, only to vanish when approached. The idea of Cromwell haunting Woodstock endures because it fits his reputation: feared in life, unquiet in death. Though the manor is gone, the story insists that Cromwell himself remains, unwilling to surrender the ground he once claimed. Like many great houses, Blenheim is honeycombed with cellars, storage rooms, and old tunnels. Most visitors never see them, but for staff, the basement corridors are part of daily life, and for centuries they have carried their own legends. Strange noises are said to echo in the vaults, banging doors, clattering chains, sudden cries. Some blamed the Civil War when prisoners were held in the cellars of Woodstock Manor. Others believe workers who died during Blenheim's construction were entombed there, their spirits restless in the dark. In the 19th century, a night watchman making his rounds claimed to hear muffled screams rising from beneath the flagstones. He fled, refusing ever to work the cellar shift again. In the 20th century, during renovations, laborers reported whispers and the sensation of unseen figures brushing past them. One insisted he heard weeping from behind a bricked-up doorway. Though no passage was found, legends say that on quiet nights, the sound of chains can still be heard clanking in the basement. Some dismiss it as creaking pipes or settling stone. Others believe the palace holds on to memories of those once trapped in its foundations, echoes of suffering that have never faded. Woodstock itself is as haunted as the palace beside it. The Bear Hotel, once a coaching inn dating back to the 13th century, has centuries of stories within its timbered walls. Guests have reported phantom footsteps in the corridors, cold spots in certain rooms, and the unsettling feeling of someone sitting on the bed when no one is there. Staff speak of doors opening on their own, and of figures glimpsed at the bar, strangers in old-fashioned dress who vanish before they can be approached. The Marlborough Arms, another historic inn, is also said to house spirits. Travelers describe hearing voices in empty rooms and the sense of being watched in the courtyard. In one tale, a guest felt her bed covers tugged during the night, as if by unseen hands. Such hauntings are perhaps unsurprising. For centuries, Woodstock was a stopping point for coaches, soldiers, and nobles traveling to and from Oxford and London. The inns saw triumph and tragedy, deals struck, duels fought, lives ended suddenly on the road. In places where generations have come and gone, ghosts are rarely far behind. One of the most famous episodes in Woodstock's history is the imprisonment of Elizabeth I. In 1554, before she became queen, Elizabeth was confined to Woodstock Palace by order of her half-sister, Queen Mary I. It was a time of suspicion, plots, and fear. Elizabeth's rooms were guarded, her movements restricted, and she lived in constant uncertainty over whether she would live or die. Legends grew quickly. Some say Elizabeth carved her name into a window with a diamond ring, defying her captors. Others claim she left letters hidden in the palace walls. After she became queen, stories of her imprisonment only deepened the atmosphere of the old palace. Today, locals say Elizabeth's spirit still lingers where she once walked. A pale figure is sometimes seen near the old palace site, dressed in Tudor gown, pacing as though still confined. Some hear the faint sound of weeping or the rustle of skirts in the grass where Woodstock Palace once stood. Whether Elizabeth herself returns or whether the ghost is one of those who watched over her, the story keeps the memory of her captivity alive. The future queen, who would rule England for nearly half a century, is remembered here not for power, but for her vulnerability. A prisoner, haunted by uncertainty. Blenheim Palace is most famous today as the birthplace of Winston Churchill, born here in 1874. He returned often throughout his life, writing, painting, and spending time with family. His connection to Blenheim is part of its identity, but some say Churchill never truly left. Staff and visitors tell of cigar smoke in empty rooms, the smell of brandy lingering where none was served, or the faint sound of footsteps followed by the sense of a heavy presence. In certain corridors, guides have reported a flicker of light, as though from a match, though no one was near. One American tourist described walking through a gallery and being overcome by a sudden wave of recognition, as if someone had just stepped out but left the air behind them marked. She later said the scent of cigars had clung to her clothes for hours. Skeptics argue it is simply the power of suggestion. Churchill's memory is so strong here that visitors imagine his presence. But others believe the great man returns in spirit, keeping watch over the palace where his story began. Woodstock and Blenheim are places where history and grandeur are impossible to miss. But behind the tapestries and gilded ceilings are echoes that refuse to fade. A white lady gliding through the halls, Cromwell's shadow clinging to the ruins, the cries of the imprisoned beneath the palace, the inns of Woodstock where guests never checked out, Elizabeth's lonely spirit pacing her prison, and the lingering scent of Churchill himself. Together, they remind us that even the most celebrated places carry shadows. The past is never truly silent, and in Woodstock and Blenheim, it still walks beside us. If you have enjoyed these tales of Woodstock and Blenheim, why not step into Cirencester, where monks with no faces and grieving women walk still among the living? Because in the Cotswolds, history never truly rests. Please subscribe to this channel to be alerted to the next episode of Ghosts of the Cotswolds.